If you saw in the upfront information, it said 5 EPM enhancements you can do by year end. And then I kept tweaking the presentation. I was brainstorming with other people, and Danielle White was helping me put all of these slides together. And 5 quickly became 6, and 6 quickly became 7. And then I just called it because we only have 45 minutes. And more importantly, we only have 59 days. We are in the home stretch of 2021. And we've all made some good forward movement, and we're still dealing with the impact that COVID is having on businesses. We're dealing with the fact that we're all spending way too much time on Zoom. We're dealing with disruption across every single industry all around the world. It's not just companies shipping and receiving goods, but whether you're doing products, you're being disrupted by the global supply chain, you're running into inflation, no matter what industry you're in a service industry, and you're in a battle out for talent. We can't change the global supply chain. We can't get your presents here by Christmas or Hanukkah. But what we can do is focus on where we actually can make an impact in these last 59 days. So I'm here today to give you 7 enhancements. You can start now, hopefully finish before you grab that glass of champagne or your other tasty beverage of choice and head out to ring in the new year. Try and remember the words to Auld Lang Syne, where we will tend to be mouthing them along with everybody else. So I'm going to give you 7 ideas, and then I'm going to break down kind of how you need to narrow the focus down for those 7 ideas if you want to have any chance of actually finishing it by year end. There's one that is critical. If you are still back in that world of Hyperion on-prem 11.124, or God's forbid anything earlier, we need to get you on 11.2. You fall off of Premier support, you fall to sustaining support, otherwise known as life support, at the end of this year. So if you're on that, please, 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 at least take your production server and get on 11.2. I'll talk through that really briefly. If you are on the cloud, though, we'll talk about some cloud things you can do, or cloud things you can add to your on-prem world of implementation. So account reconciliation, you are not going to be able to do, I don't know, microtransaction matching by the end of the year, but you can get started. You can at least say, does my general ledger equal the number of my consolidation system? We'll talk about how you can add scenario modeling. Scenario modeling, sometimes called scenario planning, really is one of the major things that was added over the last 2 years. It's definitely something that you can add to get you out of just doing one budget number. As many of us were adding scenarios over the last couple of years, we still were focusing back on that budget number that we had created back in January that was inevitably wrong. We need to start training people to add those different scenarios and understanding if we only plan one path. What is it Aesop said? A mouse with one hole is soon caught. I should put that on a slide. You need to have different routes, and you need to understand if these actions occur, if our supply chain gets affected, if our inflation increases, if our product doesn't launch well, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to talk about how we can open up a dialogue. If we're going to be doing these budgets and sending them all out, don't we by the start of next year want to have a conversation? I'm sure you're all going to amazingly beat your budgets, but don't you want to explain why? Oh, here's why we beat it by 35%. You're not going to be able to implement a new close system by year end. I did have a client call in recently and say, could I sit with my old ERP and have a new consolidation system up running by January 1st? Is that theoretically possible? Yes. Would I wish on my worst enemy? No. But there are some things you can do to get control of your close cycle by year end. So we're going to talk about those. There are, if you are on Oracle EPM Cloud and using planning, there are a lot of planning modules, a lot of planning frameworks that people think, well, maybe I want to use that someday. There's time by the end of the year to add one. And I'll show you the timeline for doing all these. And if nothing else, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to get started on any of this. There is no time like the present to come up with a plan. What is that strategy going to look like for 2022? If you wait until 2022 to figure out your strategy for 2022, I guarantee you'll be firefighting the entire year. There will be no plan, despite your best intent to plan to make a plan. You're going to spend the whole year dealing with it. So let's talk about the most urgent of these, because there's a clock ticking, and the clock is about to explode in a non-terroristic sort of way on January 1st. And that is all of you people that are back in the world of Hyperion 11.124 or earlier. Now, to be clear, Hyperion 11.2 has been out for over, well, a couple of years at this point. The latest version is 11.2.7. It just came out in the last couple of weeks. A handful of our customers have actually already moved to it. We have, I will say, close to half of our 11.124 customers have moved to 11.2. It's not only a stable version at this point, it is more stable than 11.1.2.4. They're adding some minor features, but it's really about security, stability, and scalability with 11.2. It does require an out-of-place upgrade to go to it. So you're either going to need a separate server, or you're going to need a virtual machine set up. There are some things you can do to kind of get around that, but just based on what's the official policy, it's an out-of-place upgrade. It still uses this version of SBase that is essentially 11.124 running under the covers. You do have, I get this question a lot, you do have both Windows and Linux for your 11.2. So it's not going to be an issue where you're having to figure out how to go learn Linux if you're on a Windows world. This is the good news. You're on 11.2. Congratulations. At last check, Premier support on 11.2 runs through December 2031, and it might even get extended. Their goal is for that to be your final on-prem version, but you have to get on it. If you didn't get the memo, if you're still on 11.1.2.4, your Premier support ends on December 2021, and at that point you fall to what's called sustaining support. Now, there are rumors that you can go to extended support. The difference between Premier support and sustaining support: Premier support means if there's a bug, if there's an issue, if there's a new version of Windows or Office or Chrome that comes out, they will update the product to support that new version. If you are on sustaining support, only bugs that are currently listed at the day it falls to sustaining support, meaning it's already a known bug and that they're going to fix it, only those bugs get fixed. No brand new bugs get fixed. So let's say there was a major security issue with I don't know, Windows 2019 that you're running on, and it was discovered by a bunch of black hat hackers somewhere, probably in a former Eastern Bloc country, and they're hacking all the servers. They'll issue a security patch for that on 11.2. They might theoretically issue it for 11.1.2.4, but they are literally under no obligation to do so. So that's sustaining support versus Premier support. There's an intermediate level, which is extended support, which is kind of Premier support light, and they charge you more for it. At last check, and by last check, I mean, I looked really recently, they weren't going to do extended support. So the good news, your maintenance bill is not going to go up for essentially an out of support product, but we have to get you off it. If you're going, I think I've heard something about this. If you go to that bit.ly link right there, bit.ly/3 capital GAS lowercase xk capital B, it'll actually take you to the Oracle article on how 11.1.2.4 is falling off support, and it's going to 11.2. Here's the good news. It's a pretty straightforward upgrade if, and you were waiting for the but. There are some things that are not in 11.2. Now, don't get me wrong, HFM is in 11.2, but there are some components of HFM that are not in 11.2. If you're using financial management analytics, if you're using EAL, Space Analytics Link, if you're one of those very, very rare people using the quantitative management reporting, that's gone. All of the former Brio products, interactive reporting, production reporting, and my old friend, I'm sad to be missing it, web analysis, are also gone. EPMA is gone. More coming on that one in a second. Hyperion planning is there, but some of the components are gone. Hyperion Strategic Finance, Crystal Ball, which is what kind of ran the Monte Carlo simulations, the standard user interface, all the modules are gone. Hyperion Disclosure Management, also gone, and the EPM mobile app, gone as well, all faded and disappeared. There's one of those, most of those are kind of okay, because if you're using one of the frameworks, may gods have mercy on your soul, they were not terribly great in the on-prem world, and you have means of moving those over to like custom applications. The one that might be causing some people heartburn is EPMA going away. EPMA will not be supported in 11.2. But that's the bad news. Here's the really awesome news. They actually give you DRM, data relationship management. It's what's going to let you do all your dimension maintenance, all your hierarchy maintenance. It is a restricted use copy. It's supported for the Hyperion on-prem apps only. You can't go like, oh, hallelujah, I suddenly have free DRM. I'm going to connect my general ledger to my data warehouse so I can have all my chart of accounts entity hierarchies in sync. No, can't do that. You'd actually have to own DRM to do that one. There are some really cool DRM features, though, that aren't in EPMA. You do things like derived properties, versioning, you have nice transaction history, custom validations, custom exports, hierarchy comparisons. It's a great product. You'd have to stay in the box, though. You can't like use data relationship governance. So it's meant to be a stepping stone to give you a place to do all those hierarchies, give you all the dimension management. There are a few components of EPMA, things like keeping your data in sync. That's not really there in DRM, but the major use case, the major poster thing that people did with EPMA was as an administrator-driven central place for hierarchies. That's not out there in DRM. How long does it take to do this? Really depends on how many environments you have and how thoroughly you want to test the whole thing. This is not a brand new product. This is not even an evolutionary product. It's more sort of a minorly patched version, a more stable, scalable, secure version of 11.124. So 32, and I'm calling it 59 days to do this. So if you started today and you were at the extreme, doing an out of the box, straight move everything across, 59 days. That's not true if you had something like interactive reporting or Brio or one of those things going away. But if you don't, let's call it 30 to 59 days. So let's talk account reconciliation. When we're trying to figure out how all of our data is going to tie, the ticking and tying, the manual validation of data is the #1 delay in the entire close process. My strategic assessment team goes out and calculates how long it takes to do all of these account reconciliations. We do this big annual survey. On average, 30% of the close time is verifying if the number 6 in this system equals the number 6 in that system. Like literally, it's validating data. Please, please, please let the robots do this. And you have to ask yourself, what percentage of that close time am I spending on my account recs? Is that account reconciliation even happening? Or is it maybe just we think it's happening and it's not really? What tools are you using to get it done? Is it Excel? Is it emails bouncing back and forth? Is it people hopping on Zoom meetings going, does this seem right to you? Is every account out there truly getting reconciled? Are you reconciling at the right level? Are your recs updated as the balances change during close? Or like, well, it was right, and we have no idea why it went wrong. What you will find if you actually put in place some sort of robotic process automation, some sort of automated account reconciliation, you're going to have better visibility into your completion status. You're going to have better reporting across your recommendations. If you don't do this, you're going to have lost data, lack of transparency, lost reconciliations, inefficient processes, lost time. As I mentioned earlier, we can't find people to do things like this anymore. There are something like, what was it last check? 9 million unemployed people with 11 million open job positions, and nothing is lining up exactly. This is a major area of risk and compliance. So here's the good news. Even if you're not on Oracle Cloud EPM, you can just go get it and do this part, which is the Oracle Cloud EPM account reconciliation. It's really straightforward. It's business driven. It's designed to give you a view into your reconciliation process. You're not going to be able to do, as I said, transactional level matching by year end. You're not going to be able to reconcile across everything, but you can get started with some baby steps. You can simply say, let's take our balances in and let's make sure that maybe the balance in our GL equals the balance in our consolidation, or that the number in our planning system equals our consolidation system. Maybe make sure your net income equals your retained earnings. Make sure you're following a couple different GAAP rules. It's really easy to put this in place to get started on that balance loading reconciliation email notification. It's a simple product. If I could advocate for it, it pays for itself. It handles all that automation. It gives you some governance, gives you real-time status. Wow, 90% of our things tie and these don't. It'll even verify, do we have both halves of our intercompanies? Compliance departments love this. So it's not only an accounting thing where it's like, yeah, it's going to save us some time on the accounting side. Your auditors, your compliance group, your risk management group is going to love that you have a system that's actually verifying. And it's really fast to put it in place. If you're not trying to go full blown all out, make every system in my entire organization tie, you can do at least the financial side of account reconciliations in 6 weeks. So let's talk scenario modeling. This is the one that is going to give you the most bang for your buck on the planning side going into 2020. Scenario modeling has been around for years. It just didn't really come into the spotlight until the pandemic came and hit us in the face. Once it started, companies started churning out all these alternate scenarios, and they were doing it at this rapid pace. And many were doing it in a really manual, heavy process in Excel, where they take their budgets down or take their forecast and go, well, what if it went up 10%? What if it went down 75%? So it is not a new product, but it is essentially a new name. But if you want to use it to model a new product launch, it's great for that. What if this new product, what if this new service did really well? What impact would that new product launch have on my profitability? If my sales force attrition hits 50%, I was talking to a software vendor recently, and they said, yeah, it's a revolving door on our side. People arrive and they're gone within 2 years. We're happy to keep them that long. What impact does that have on your revenue? What is that? Are you lowering your customer lifetime value? What about if these commodity prices or the supply chain keeps spiking? I was looking at something weird the other day. Olive oil was like up 33%. Lumber has been up 200% and all the way down to up only 60%. What does that do to all your products? And if you have all these scenarios in place, you're going to be ready for those alternate scenarios. And it's really easy to put in place. There's within that Oracle EPM cloud side, you have scenario modeling that's going to give you all this high-level forecast. It's going to help you figure out, what do my financial statements look like? Let me do my long-range planning. Scenario modeling right out of the box is going to give you income statement scenarios, balance sheet scenarios, cash flow scenarios, even if you're not using Oracle EPM Cloud for your planning. So maybe you're still in an on-prem world or using some other product. You can do just scenario modeling. It actually will give you a recommended starting chart of accounts, recommending practices for here's how my revenue could grow, here's how my constraints will look like. Your finance group, particularly your FP&A group, is going to love this. Your treasury group will love it. If you're doing any sort of M&A out there, if you've got any sort of investments, it's also super handy for putting together things like board packages, investment valuations. If you're going, what is this? Is it a brand new product? No. For a while, it was called strategic modeling. Before that, it was called Hyperion Strategic Finance when it was on-prem. Before that, it was a separate company called Alcar. This is a product that's been around, God, I don't know, 25 plus years at this point. And it's really good for giving you a bit of visibility into 2022. So my advice, take a moment. Put in place strategic or scenario modeling, even if you're just going to have 5 or 6 people look at it and say, now that the end is in sight, now we have a little visibility into 2022, kind of looks like the COVID thing won't be done by the end of the year. Kind of looks like we're going to have supply chain issues running into next year. Even if you believe inflation is a temporary blip, how long will that temporary blip go? What are those most plausible scenarios for 2022? It could be, wow, 2022 is going to be our best year ever, massive global expansion. Or it might be, it's going to be our best year ever once we get beyond our delayed expansion. Or it could be, let's definitely not expand ever. We really want to control everything. Could be anything from, hey, those new products we launched did really well in 2021 to, well, that didn't work. We should try something different. When you're looking ahead to 2022, you're going to find that there are too many scenarios possibly for you to plan for every one of them. My recommendation, group them together into broad categories. Those categories that cover 3 to 5 kind of most likely general cases, and then expand them. Drive them off your KPIs so they're easy to revise. Do it in scenario modeling because it'll run all your various scenarios, your Monte Carlo simulations for you. Let it populate them into full financial scenario plans. One last bit of advice on scenario modeling, because I could do hours on this. Make sure you take whatever those 3 to 5 plans are that you generate, convert them into a series of actions. What you don't want to do is say, well, if that scenario happens, probably we should update our resume. What actions can you take to avoid that really bad scenario? And if it does happen, what are the actual tangible things you're going to do? Whether it's shutting down a product line, it's controlling hiring, controlling spending, or on the converse side, if some of those plans are really awesome, make sure that you are making that plan happen. Then if it does happen, what actions you're going to take? We're going to add a new factory. We're going to go really aggressive with our hiring. We're going to give tons and tons of signing bonuses. Just make sure you take those plans, convert them to actions, and then share them widely and broadly across your entire organization. Scenario modeling, because it is nicely self-contained. Again, it doesn't have to replace your whole planning system. It's just one of those little quick things you can add in. You can start it and finish it before the end of the year and go into next year with a really good grasp on what those potential scenarios are. I know we've all been just rushing for the last 2 years, just trying to get our products out the door, trying to keep the doors from getting locked, little eviction notices on the front. It's now time to pause and say, what can we do to really make this good, strong, and improve with our scenario modeling? So let's talk a bit about if we are going to have these various scenarios and we have these actions, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to open up a dialogue about what those numbers look like? Well, that concept of going beyond just data and giving it context, the idea about taking numbers and putting words together with those numbers, that kind of catchy term is narrative reporting. It also means to tell a story. To not just hand someone an income statement and go, well, now it's your problem. You figure out what the 3 things are you should be looking at, but really say, hey, here's your information. Here are some things you should pay attention to. Maybe you should go look at this and figure out why it's happening. They come back and go, well, I think it's happening because of this. Well, we've looked at it a little bit more and it's probably related to this. And here are some actions you can go take to deal with it. This is an art form. And I'll tell you where most companies start. Well, first, definition. Technically, what is narrative? It's context to your data through storytelling, often with words. I suppose you could paint a visual picture. You know, here's a trend, here's a chart, here's a pie, whatever. But there is an art to narrative. Most people don't know how to communicate a good story. They don't know how to hit with all the key points on here's what it's going to look like. So what do most people do? They summarize. They take the important data points and go, net income looks like it's going down next year, or we've missed our total budget. That's actually a good starting point. Summarization gets you out of the details, takes you up to a higher level. You can start to see root causes. You can start to see trends. You can start to see impact. Good narrative is here to inform. It's here to cut through all those data details. It's here to summarize. It's here to communicate and communicate quickly back and forth. Narrative reporting is quite often required when your financial goals aren't met. 2021 and 2022 exposed a lot of people for walking into a meeting and going, why did you miss your budget? I don't know, COVID, there's like something going on. It's like, okay, what impact did COVID have on our business? Did COVID affect our supply chain? Well, no, we're a services company. Okay, did it affect our demand? Well, no, demand actually went up. Did it affect our customer relations? Well, we actually had more Zoom meetings. Okay, then what did COVID do to affect your numbers? We actually have to have an ability to explain not only that there was a variance, but why that variance actually happened. Now, if you're watching this presentation, I assume you actually want to have a dialogue. You want to open up that conversation. You want to go back and forth. Good thing about narrative reporting is it will collect all of that back and forth dialogue, all those footnotes, all that commentary. It'll do it in one place. So there are a number of places where it comes up. The most common one is definitely variance analysis. It pains me to think that a whole lot of companies, their idea of variance analysis is a column called variance, and sometimes they'll color code it in like red if it's really, really bad. At a lot of other companies, variance analysis is an email back and forth, or it's a column with Excel, things you can go type in. First of all, we need to do that in an automated, centralized way where all those comments are attached to the data. There's a lot more you can do with narrative reporting. You can use it to talk about what's going to happen. It's like, oh, if this number keeps trending in this way, we've got a major risk issue. You can use it to comment on something unexpected. We went down in the West because we had a big backup at the port of Long Beach. So out in LA, our container ships took 45 days to get into the port and to get fully unloaded. So it caused a major production shortage on the west. We didn't really run into that on the east. You can use it to communicate your decisions. Well, we looked at this number and here's how we're going to change it so that doesn't have a problem going forward. You can use it to communicate scenarios. You can use it to communicate visions. What is 2022 going to look like, 2023, 2024? If there are certain major hurdles that you pass, certain milestones, you can communicate those. And you can use it for that level of disclosures, those financial notes that you actually want to capture. Narrative reporting it can do a couple of things. It can do standard statutory reports. So I want to do a nice income statement, a balance sheet, a cash flow, an operating statement. That doesn't even take 30 days. You can definitely get that down to doing it in a couple of days if you want to have a new report out. But narrative reporting is, and it's all kind of lumped together under the same name. I tend to think of management reporting as my highly formatted reports. The replacer for financial reports, may it rest in a pit of hell. Linking together your EPM data, your S-based data, your Fusion Cloud data, all that, your statutory words. But narrative reporting is about that commentary. It's also about packaging things up together in books. It's about having tasks and due dates and commentary going back and forth. So it's kind of above the report level. There also was something called Disclosure Manager. This is now being handled through a partnership with EasyXBRL. So if you're actually doing kind of disclosure information, sort of leaving the building, you can do that. You can do it right within narrative reporting. It just kind of wasn't done that often. And you're probably not replacing your external XBRL, you're reporting to the SEC or Edgar by year end. So you're probably doing one of those first two in the next 59 days. There are a few other things it can do, but at the end of the day, it's about power to the people. Let's go let our people make their own reports. Let's let them navigate through our own data. Let's let them go ask all their detailed questions, and then let's go have a really good conversation about it. Now, a couple of quick things. Even if you are on-prem, even if you actually have nothing, Oracle, you're sitting out on, I don't know, Workday or SAP or something like that, you can still use narrative reporting. It is actually designed to be a product agnostic tool. Now, if you have your data in Cloud EPM, it's already right there. It's just one of the natural default data sources. But I mean, heck, you could bundle in Excel and have commentary about it. You could put in a bunch of Word documents together into a report package and use narrative reporting to do that. I really like this tool. One of the things I really like is they didn't feel tied to making it look like financial reports. So it doesn't look like, oh, it's a FR 11.5 or kind of a new version of HFM, nothing like that. It was really designed to be a pure cloud product. It wasn't migrated from an on-prem world. They really just started over with how does this tool actually look like? And it's really fast to implement. As I said, if you want to do a few reports in it, maybe bundle a report package together, you can do that in a week or two. If you actually want to get all of your users in there and have them start having commentary about your data, you can do it within a month. So we've talked a little bit about financial close. Let's talk about how we can actually make our close a little bit better. People tend to think of Oracle EPM Cloud as this massive suite of solutions, like all these different tools working together, and they don't realize that you can just use parts of it. Think of it more like a toolbox that you buy from Home Depot or Lowe's, and you open it up, and there are some things you're going to use all the time. There's a saw, there's a hammer, there's a screwdriver, and then there's some things like I'm not entirely sure what that thing does. Like, oh, it turns out it's a sander, or that's a jigsaw. Maybe I'll use it once in a while, and you might put it to the side. Well, sometimes you really need that specific thing. Like, wow, I just really need to sand this board down. Task Manager tends to be lumped together in, oh, that's part of doing my entire financial close. It can actually be operated separately. So Task Manager is an evolution of an on-prem product, the old Hyperion Close Manager, but it lets you take your process for, it could be anything. It could be your process for monthly close or quarterly close. It could be your process for how you're going to do your budgets or how you're going to collect all of your forecasts. Anytime you have a series of tasks that you want to assign, you want to manage them, and then you want to monitor them on this predefined schedule. And unlike a project plan, you're like, well, it kind of sounds like Microsoft project. A project plan is essentially designed to be done once. Task manager is designed to be repeated. It's something that you're going to do maybe every month or quarter for your close. You're going to do it, I don't know, once a year for your budget. You're going to do it every single month for your rolling forecast. So task manager just lets you manage that entire process by tracking all those tasks related to it. There is a related tool also kind of carried over from an on-prem world, supplemental data manager. It's now looking at it, it's a way to collect all that ancillary data. Maybe it's a bunch of account reconciliations or a bunch of credit charges you're trying to make add together. The key part about Task Manager is it opens up the lines of communication. This was critically important in 2021 and 2020 and 2021, because it turned out, with all of us not even realizing it, a huge component of our close process was standing up and talking to the person in the cubicle next to us about, are we actually done yet? And then all of a sudden we went home. And that process we didn't realize was there on, hey, I'm done with my thing. Are you ready to kind of start your next part? All of a sudden that became Zoom. It became emails going back and forth. It led to a lot of disruption, led to a lot of bottlenecks in the close process. The key thing about Task Manager is it's an automatic, think of it as a dynamic project plan. The second my task is finished, the next person gets notified, hey, it's time for your task to start, or we can both start ours at the same time. This also gets you into seeing a nice dynamic view at all times on what percentage is done. Is there anything that's going to stop you from missing your close or make you late on your forecast? Or maybe it's time to do project planning and you're way behind in project planning. This opens up lines of communication throughout that entire process so you can get ahead of it before something actually breaks. It's really simple to set up. It's done through templates. They are these templates, think of them as repeatable business processes, just things you're going to do every month or every quarter. Administrators come in, they set up what one of these templates look like. It could be across the board, we're all going to do the same thing every month, or it could be, well, we mostly all do the same thing every month, but down in Argentina, they have a slightly different close process, or in Brazil, maybe there is no process because they change GAAP, every single month. It could be, well, everyone has a standard process, except once a quarter, we do this separate compliance type activity. And I think a template essentially becomes a series of scheduled tasks that are all linked together. Now, it does automatically connect to financial consolidation and close, so you can pull in your close data as things happen and go back and forth. But it'll also link to planning. It has a built-in capacity to say when something reconciles in account recs, it automatically feeds up in. You can take Task Manager, even if you're not ready to replace your close system. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to get that done by the end of the year. Plus, I'd want to run a couple months in parallel anyway, and there are less than 2 months left in the year. I'm going to leave that alone, but I'm going to start getting visibility onto that entire task plan. One of the common questions I get is, how can I reduce 10%, 20% of the time out of my close process? Or how can I squeeze 30% of the effort out of my budget process? The key to that is just visibility. It's understanding what all those tasks are. What are the ones that tend to drag on? What are the non-value added tasks? You start talking about lean manufacturing, you can start doing lean process management, where you actually look at those tasks and figure out what needs to drop out. It's a quick tool to implement in terms of setting up the templates. It's really easy. You turn it on inside of EPM Cloud. You can go and start putting all those tasks in. The reason it takes a little bit of time is people think they have a good handle on what those tasks are. It's like, oh, we make this calendar in Excel and it's got a grid, and we used to put it on people's cubicle walls, and now they look at it online through Zoom. There are a lot of tasks that have interdependencies that you don't realize. It's not always true. Well, this finishes on day 1 and I'm not allowed to start this until day 2. Sometimes those day 2 activities could start halfway through day 1 if stuff actually finished early. So Task Manager, I tend to budget 6-ish weeks for a quick implementation of it, just because you're going to, how do I put this politely? If you turn over a stone, you'll have no idea what's going to be under there. So Task Manager implementations quite often uncover a lot of hidden tasks you didn't realize were going to be done. But straight implementation, call it 6 weeks. You are probably, although I have seen it done, my good friend Bill Mal at Children's Hospital Colorado did implement an entire planning solution with Oracle EPM Cloud in I think it was 6 weeks, start to finish. Might have been 5. So it is possible, but I'm going to assume for most of you, it's not truly realistic that you're going to start and finish. So I'm going to give you something that actually is realistic, and that is improving one specific area of planning. So it might be I'm going to really deep dive on my workforce planning. It's my #1 controllable cost. Right now, it seems damn out of control as labor costs are skyrocketing, but I need to have a handle on that. What am I going to do with all my open hires, my to-be hires? Do I need to transfer people around? What are my recruiting costs going to look like? What are my, all the way from a hire to retire, what does that process look like? Or it might be improving on capital planning. It might be improving on projects or financial planning. So there's a built-in framework for each one of these. Now, it's different than the somewhat lamented old on-prem modules. The old on-prem modules assumed you wanted to do everything in the module, and it was really difficult to turn anything off. And if you did, you had to have a high price, but deservedly so consultant know what to turn off so they wouldn't break everything. Well, the planning modules flipped that on their head. And they said, how about we do a different approach? How about we let you just turn things on that you want on? So in financials, well, maybe I don't want to do balance sheet and cash flow planning by the end of the year. All I really want to do, just OpEx. I just want to do operating expenses. I want a nice little driver library that's going to suggest to me, oh, here are some key things that tend to impact, marketing expense, or here are some things that tend to impact, salaries and benefit expense. You could just turn that on, and you go, that's all I have time for by the end of the year is just that portion. But then you get into Q1 of next year, and you say, well, I really want to go into revenue and cost of goods sold. I really want to expand all the way down to gross margin. You can turn that on. And then midpoint through next year, oh, I want to add balance sheet planning, because it turns out we spend billions on balance sheet. And there's like this one guy named Bob from Account Temps, and he's the only one that ever does balance sheet. Maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe we should actually all be involved in balance sheet planning. You can turn it on. Then you can have it feed automatically over to your cash flow side. You can turn on the analysis side. Again, people tend to think that these are kind of all or nothing, because that's sort of the mindset we had from the on-prem world. Oh, if I turn on financials, well, I've got to turn on capital, because that's got CapEx planning, and it's got to feed the balance sheet, which has got to feed over, depreciation, amortization. It's got to feed over to the EBITDA or net income. Or I need workforce to do labor planning. I need projects. You don't. These are meant to, if you turn them all on, it automatically will share data across all of them, but you turn them on piece by piece. My advice, if you're going to only turn on one by the end of the year, if you don't already have a good handle on driver-based expense planning, do OpEx. It's going to give you some nice driver library, get you out of the world of planning for dollars. If you're already like, yeah, we're pretty baked with our budget process, cool. It means the planners have some time on their hands. My advice of what I think is going to have a really big impact going into 2022, workforce planning. This is also one of those you can kind of turn parts on as you need them. So you could say, I want to turn on just job code planning, or I want to turn on skill set planning, or I want to turn on, automatic full burden cost planning. You can turn on anything you want. Maybe you want to do some EEOC analysis, equal employment opportunity commissions. You want to do some demographic analysis, you can go turn that on. Maybe it's capital. It's getting a really good understanding of what your CapEx is. What are your assets that can be depreciated? What are your assets that can't be depreciated? What does that whole framework actually look like? One of the things I like about projects is it gets you into really kind of initiative investment type planning. If I have these 20 projects and I can only fund 10 of them, what 10 should I actually fund? What is the impact going to be? What's the resource plan going to look like? What is the capital spending going to look like? Is it contract labor? Is it direct labor? Is it indirect labor? You can do all that with project framework. You could start off by saying, yeah, we have too many projects to do for next year. I really just want to load them in and have it sort them for me. And tell me, should I do this one because it has the best return on investment, or this one because it has the best economic value add, or internal rate of return? Project framework will do all that. Now, you cannot implement every one of these frameworks by the end of the year, but depending on which one you pick, you can get one of them in. As I said, if you don't have a good handle on expenses, maybe start with OpEx. That's really quick one to get up in place. Most companies, pretty standard how they do OpEx. You can use it really in the box. Most impactful one for most organizations is going to be doing workforce planning. If you do decide to do the projects framework, I advise you start in the IT department. It's one of the most project-oriented portions of your entire organization, so go start over there. So I've talked about 6 EPM enhancements you can get done before that big fireworks show on December 31st. So without further ado, drum roll, old lang syne, if you will, here's the 7th EPM enhancement. I know what you're thinking. Shouldn't there be 8? No, that'd be 8-minute apps. We're doing 7 EPM enhancements. It is not possible to implement your entire strategy plan for the end of the year. However, you can figure out what that strategy should be. Are you going to be able to communicate it, get consensus, have everybody on board? No, but you can at least figure out how we're going to go break down those silos. What is our roadmap going to look like for 2022, for 2023, for 2024? Get that target plan, that roadmap in place for those next 3 years, and you can do that by year end. I tend to think of it as, am I keeping pace with the change in my company that we're seeing in the outside industry? So mentally, this is a little mental exercise. So look at your screen and go, okay, my company along the bottom, how good are we at changing? Are we kind of in the middle, internally? Our people, they're comfortable with change, or is it like we're really good at changing, like we do it every day ending in a Y? Or is it we are a company of change resistors? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's good enough for grandpa, it's good enough for me. That's your axis along the bottom. Your axis up the side is, okay, now how fast is your industry changing? Are you in something like a services industry that's changing rapidly, or even an industry that wasn't having to change? Maybe a consumer packaged goods company that is now having supply chain disruption, inflation, job wage, margin shrinkage, you name it. So now being forced to kind of change high. Now figure out where you fit your company versus your industry. Now, depending on where those are, like if you are in the top right, your company is changing fast and your industry is changing just as fast, you're in a thought leadership space where you actually have to come up with the next generations of ideas. If you're over on the right and you're changing faster than your industry, congratulations. If you're a high company change rate and your industry is changing slowly, you are the one not being disrupted, you are the one disrupting. On the flip side, if your industry is changing faster than you are, you're a follower, you're static, you could even be at risk if you're not able to keep up. So what we have to do is make sure that we are doing top level thinking, that we are letting our strategy drive what our tactics are going to look like, that we have all these multiple actions coordinated, and that we have some idea of what our goals are going to be for 2022 and beyond. Think of a strategy as more not, I'm going to drive down the road and then turn left, drive another 100 feet and turn right. Think of it as more, I'm currently in Arlington, Texas, and as much as I love the Cowboys, I really want to go to Disney World, right? Tactics are what that route is actually going to be. And tactics push down from that top level to the entire organization. So it could be by division, could be by cost center, by profit center, all the way down to the personal level. Tactics support the strategy. If my strategy is to get to Disney World and my tactics go, Edward, you should head west from Arlington, it's going to be really hard to get to Disney World, although Disneyland is nice too. Tactics make sure that you are coordinating, getting your strategy actually executed. Tactics are more like, what is my mission going to be? My advice to everybody, plan and then stick to what that plan is going to look like. Now, I would love to explain how to do a strategy plan. I have an entire session on that one. I'm not going to do it. My advice, figure out why you're doing it. What are your goals going to look like? How is it going to help you to have a strategy? Some companies go, yeah, if I had a strategy, we wouldn't follow it anyway. That's just not what we do. We're a firefighting company. But if you're not, then, okay, well, what is it going to give you? What are the payoffs going to look like? How do you actually hold it between now and the end of the year? It's kind of hard to hold it during it's hard to hold it during the last week of November. It's hard to hold it during the last week or two of December, but you're going to have to actually get together virtually or in person or hybrid. And then who are the right people that are going to be in that room? The planning for doing a strategy will take longer than your actual strategy sessions, but do it and do it now. This is the most non-technical one on here, and it could very well be the most impactful. So give it a thought on what your strategy is going to look like. If you need help, contact me. I have an entire group that does it. Final thoughts. 59 days doesn't seem like a lot of time, but there are plenty of ways to finish this year strong. More importantly, there are some things you can do to give yourself a really strong foundation that makes 2022 even better. So whether it's just something tactical, just getting onto 11.2, so that you're on a fully supported version, whether it's taking a little labor out, doing account reconciliations, maybe it's getting better visibility in the future with scenario modeling, maybe it's opening up a dialogue with narrative reporting, maybe it's getting a handle on your task and figure out what your bottlenecks are with Task Manager, maybe it's improving one area of planning with a planning module, or maybe it's figuring out what your global strategy should look like. So I am curious as to which one of these you think is actually going to be the most impactful. But if you're going to take one screenshot, mentally put this in your head. A lot of these don't actually need to be a massive project that tackles everybody. If you're in an IT function, you can probably figure out how to do an 11.2 upgrade by year end. If you're high level in the organization, or if you know somebody high level, you can do a strategy plan that only involves 10 or 15 people, by year end. Scenario modeling, you can go put it in place and just go show it to somebody. It's like, hey, would we be interested in doing this? This is what it looks like. So some of these are more wide reaching, but I tried to narrow them all down to just 7 things you can do by year end. Now, this is our opening of a much larger conference for the next couple of days. We have sessions breaking out into multiple tracks. We're doing more technical tracks today. We have more kind of industry focus tomorrow. If you're only going to attend one other session, I'd like to advocate for mine. I'm doing an S-based service session later today, but no, that's not it. You're only going to attend one other session. Make sure you go to Matt Bradley and Harry Sankar's keynote tomorrow morning. They're going to be talking about how Oracle EPM is going to change, what that road ahead looks like. Since there wasn't a big in-person Kscope or an open world this year, they're going to treat us to a lot of plans of what they're thinking. So definitely, if you can only make time for 45 minutes tomorrow morning at the same time to go attend their keynote. We have a lot of content. It's totally free. Tell everybody. Thank you all. You are what makes a vibrant EPM community. Without all of you, there would be nobody to actually do all these projects, nobody to actually implement them all, nobody to carry it forward. So my name is Edward Roske. I help fund and put on this Solutions Conference every day as a labor of love. But you all are our people. We're together as a community. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your 2-day Solutions 2021.